Hello, everybody. Long time no see. Sunny Puzikas here from somewhere in snowy but not very cold Utah. Um, I guess we can talk a little bit about basketball. Uh, Obviously, it's not my specialty, it's not my credo, it's not what I do. But I want to use basketball and certain components of training and the game itself to make some points, to use it as analogy as it reflects on the way we train, the way we prepare, the way we structure our training, specifically in one field, which is a force-on-force training. Force-on-force has become somewhat, you can say, of a mainstream within the circles of people that take firearm classes, self-defense classes, combative/martial arts classes. It's nowhere near as mainstream as, in my opinion, it should be. Nevertheless, the progress and its acceptance as a necessary part of our training in preparation for violence has increased quite significantly over the past decade. Now, let me preface this and just say that no, I'm certainly not any kind of pioneer of force-on-force training. Force-on-force training has been around for many, many years and decades, using different tools going all the way back to World War II, post-World War II era. Gradually it has employed different tools that came from more of a gamey side of the field, namely using paintball, airsoft gear, and so on, until gradually industry has developed specific tools, best known being like simunitions and UTM, conversion kits, weapons and ammunition and protective gear to be used in force-on-force training. Up until fairly recently, and even today, due to cost, I wouldn't call it prohibitive, but it is not easily accessible for a lay person who just wants to go like, you know what, I have nothing better to do this weekend, I'm gonna do something good for myself, and here, let me go take force-on-force class, shoot 300 UTM or simunition rounds, and it will not come at the cost of your Starbucks coffee cup or McDonald's breakfast. It will be significantly more pricey. And the number of places and instructors and coaches that offer that training is still relatively limited. There is a big number of firearms instructors that do not offer force-on-force classes. It's even more pronounced in martial arts combatives community, which you would think that with majority of martial arts school studios and classes and combatives in the combatives community, the fact of today that there is a fairly high chance that weapons may be present during the confrontations, and you may have to deal with that, whether it's a weapon that your opponent has or opponents, or weapon that may be taken from you. Nevertheless, weapons, be it edged weapons, impact weapons, flexible weapons, improvised weapons, or firearms, is the reality at these times. So within martial arts community, I really don't see that many schools addressing this side of the coin, to where they will teach one way or the other some kind of a disarm, some kind of a defense, but the force-on-force paradigm is not being employed very widely. But nevertheless, it is being propagated more and more. and I think it is a high time to address some specific issues in the way force-on-force training is being structured. The reason I chose to bring this basketball with me here, and it started snowing quite heavily. I was gonna show my incredible skills on this board right here in sinking in some nice shots and all that, but I guess I'm gonna have to skip on that due to inclement weather. I'm getting older and softer, so forgive me for that. But I think throughout the explanation you will get the gist of what I'm trying to say. Okay. This is not only referring to force-on-force training, this is a much bigger picture, but you probably should put forth some effort to organize your training, to have, so to speak, some kind of a blueprint, some kind of guidelines as to what's needed to be addressed, what progression those things that need to be addressed will be addressed, what sequencing, what are your goals, what are you striving to achieve with specific training sessions. Okay. I'm noticing the trend in force-on-force, and it's not a new trend. It's been there since the beginning, but it certainly has expanded in the past, I would say 5-6 years, and expanded very significantly, is the focus on the scenario-based classes. What I mean by scenario-based classes, it's basically a person will be given I'll just use Simunitions as an example, but in general it's numerous manufacturers that make the gear, but just for the ease of conversation I'll use Simunition. A person is given Simunitions gun, maybe he's given 1 or 2 magazines with Simunitions ammo in it, protective gear. He's gonna be sent in, let's say, into a specific area of training facility, be it a room, be it between the cars, be it some kind of a setup, right? And he's gonna face a specific situation. This could be a situation of someone demanding money at an ATM machine. This could be a situation of someone confronting you because they think that you are responsible for some terrible act of abuse and violence against their loved one, family member, or they think that you, while parking, is the person who damaged their prized Mercedes in the parking lot of a Walmart or Starbucks. And now the confrontation starts, and confrontation escalates to where you have to make choices, decisions, whether you're going to be actively participating in it, you're going to try to remove yourself from the situation, and if you make either of those choices, how it can be done, how it should be done. It's a great exercise. It's a great theoretical exercise to kind of gradually develop some mind flexibility, where just because I have a gun doesn't mean that I have to use the gun, right? And it certainly makes sense, and it certainly is a I would say a required part of a training. The problem that I see is this. A lot of folks, and I'm going to be blunt about this, there's a lot of classes out there that use some kind of war terminology, fighting this, combative this. In essence, if you look at majority of firearms training classes, and I'm talking now outside of force-on-force paradigm, firearms, shooting, live ammo, they are not, in essence, in their spirit, fighting classes. They are shooting classes. They are marksmanship classes. As such, they develop certain attributes and skills, and most importantly, they develop habits. They develop habits that we take those developed skills and habits and attributes into application realm that is now within contained scenario in the force-on-force training environment, right? And brain gets involved. We're trying to think, is this a situation that's going to escalate into the use of deadly force? Is it justified? Is it legally, morally, in many other dimensions? Is it proper to use deadly force, or should I try to de-escalate? Should I try to remove myself? How I do this? And on and on and on. Again, great mental exercises. It's a necessary skills to develop and sharpen with time. The problem, the way I see it, is this. Due to us bringing habits and skills and skill sets into this mental exercise, our adaptation of those skills kind of goes in a very different path that really does not make us better fighters. It makes us think about fight avoidances, makes us think about many mental factors involved, even emotional factors involved, of how we're gonna deal with a specific situation, and what's gonna be our attitude, what's gonna be our body language, posture, facial expressions, voice deployment in our communications with people that we have a confrontation with. It's all good and dandy. I really have no problem, and I repeat myself again, this is a necessary area to address and take a deeper look at. Again, the issue is that we bring a shooter skills and shooter habits into environment that has a potential fight. What is potential fight? Does it mean that I do my talking, the guy is at ATM, he demands money, through my incredible persuasive skills and incredible control of body language, facial expressions, I'm a great actor, I make scary faces, my voice goes up and down, I use fancy language, I use very witty sayings, and I'm cool, I'm funny. In class, people even laugh looking at me. They go like, man, this guy is a sarcastic asshole, right? And you feel good about yourself because you go like, man, look at the way I manipulate the situation, look at the way I confuse people, and on and on. But if all of that fails and your opponent chooses for one reason or another to take a next step towards escalation, and it becomes physical. Physical doesn't necessarily mean right away that from his huge bulging backpack he pulls out AK-47 with a 45, with a 47 cannot have 45 round, 40 round magazine attached to it, points it at you, and demands with a little bit more forcefully that which he asked for before, a little bit of your cash. No, escalation may be in the form of him putting his hands on you, of him lunging towards you, of him trying to tackle you, trying to grab you. Maybe the movement could indicate that he is reaching for something around his waistband or in his pocket. You may, to a certain degree, reasonably suspect that it's a weapon. Is there a guarantee for that it is a weapon? Well, Your Honor, I thought it was a weapon. It was actually, he was reaching for a pack of cigarettes because he was being nervous, but he didn't quite make it, because now he has 6 extra orifices in his being, and he's been pronounced dead on the scene. We have an issue here, right? And it's not just a legal issue because, if you call good experts, if you have good lawyers and all that stuff, you may not get homicide 1, homicide 2, whatever. You may get off with a manslaughter or even less, or maybe under certain circumstances in certain localities, certain states, you may completely, so to speak, get off from the possible charges that would carry with it significant time in not so distant places. The problem here is also morality of it, right? We do say and many of us do give lip service that the best fight is the one that never happened. We were able to avoid it, de-escalate it, or get away from it. We do give that lip service, and it's great, and it is a true statement. It's not some kind of a posturing or virtue signaling kind of a statement. If you ask professionals, whether in emergency services or whatnot, paramedics, do they really enjoy what they're doing? I mean, they see great purpose in what they're doing, but I doubt you're going to find many seasoned paramedics that will tell you, man, I cannot wait to do CPR on the next, year and a half old baby. This is so exciting. I love doing that. No, I would rather never see that again. Or extracting broken up, crushed body from the car in the major accident on the freeway. No, we don't look for it. And I say we because I used to be an emergency professional, so to speak, firefighter, paramedic. No, we don't look for it, right? We have skills to deal with it if needed, but we don't look for it. Now, when you have that escalation and you go through scenario-based training that gradually may teach you some ways of de-escalation and avoidance, and again, quality of that varies in different classes, approaches vary, and I think this field is still somewhat in its infancy. There's a lot more to be done. I think people would be well advised to look at acting, to look at spending time with posture, body language, using your arms, how to deploy your arms, how to gesticulate, what they project when you do that stuff, which things can be seen as aggressive, which means can be seen as too submissive, which invites more aggression from your opponents. So again, this is a fairly loaded field, de-escalation and avoidance, that is, again, in my opinion, is still in its relative infancy. But if all that fails, whether our training is in the infancy stages or not in this field, where do we go if we come from a bunch of shooting classes? We go for our gun. The guy goes for a tackle, we go for our gun. We try to create distance, or maybe if you have some movement training, even angle. If you're really one of the few chosen ones and you have taken some classes with certain instructors, you may even have certain skill sets that involve entangled violence with deployment of firearms. You may have some jiu-jitsu, grappling, wrestling skills. You may even be one of the very few that has striking skills. But all that is being used as nothing more than simple delay tactic, or as a tactical step, and I'm borrowing the language from Mr. Craig Douglas, to earn your weapon access, right? Don't be accessing your weapon while it has hands right in front of you, because the weapon can be grabbed, and now you're dealing with weapon retention, weapon takeaway situations, and on and on and on, right? So I'm looking at all this and I'm going, what is missing? What is it that we're not addressing? What is it that, with the analogy in the basketball, right? What are we bringing into a basketball game? We're bringing this. We bring ability to work well from our wrist, or in the case with the weapon, with our trigger finger. We have developed to one degree or another good posture as we're standing at the free throw line. Through prolonged practice in classes and on our own time going to the shooting ranges, we develop the feel for distance, direction, proper presentation of the weapon. We already have, in basketball terms, the wrist work. In gun terms, the trigger work. We know how to align our eyes with sights and the target. We give lip service to the rules of be aware what's beyond, what's in front, and on and on and on. And we do everything that needs to be done to accommodate that free throw, right? Now, if you are to play, whether it's 1-on-1, 2-on-2, or uneven numbers, or you have to play against a team without having a team, on the basketball court, do you think that having good wrist work, having a 99% proficiency from the free throw line makes you capable to survive that game? Mind you, in basketball, you really don't perish, right? You simply lose the game and you live another day to hopefully have a rematch, to train more, to become better at faking moving, having better defense, being more physical, developing different ways of getting around the defenders, tricking them, breaking their ankles, right? Going for a layup, working in the paint, understanding the positional, understanding the angulation, understanding starting to gradually understand the intricacies of the movement, as in making your movement less predictable, as in making your movement more, at least from the perspective of someone watches it, random and chaotic, where they cannot quite predict, right? Your movement, if you just strutting across the basketball court, you're not hard to stick with, so to speak, and have a contact with, and to a certain degree be controlled and prevented from having that perfect opening for perfect deployment of your perfectly developed wrist shot, right? That you have worked on so diligently to perfect from a free throw line. No, most likely coaches in the basketball, if you are that guy who has a nearly perfect free throw, and once you get on the court and you get bumped and there's grind and there's physicality and there's fouls and people don't play fair and people have physical attributes that you don't possess. They are faster, they are stronger, they are more sudden. They are very sticky. They are very good at projecting ceaseless pressure on you. There is no opening for perfect shot. There is no possibility to find yourself unguarded and ready for a clean, perfect shot. You have to create the opportunity for any shot, not even the perfect shot. You have to find that split second where you're gonna have to release that ball so quickly from quite a bit significantly less than perfect position that doesn't really replicate in almost any way, shape, or form what you do from the free throw line. What are those coaches going to tell you? They're probably going to tell you to hit the gym. They're probably going to tell you that you need to address your certain attributes. Your initiation of movement sucks. People can read your initiation of movement. Your change of direction absolutely sucks because you're standing too tall. Your positioning, your loading process of your muscle to initiate the movement, or even how the loading process is conceived to facilitate something, or loading process determines what you can do. So there's a lot of technicalities you're going to have to address in developing a baseline, which is the attributes that can eventually be put into work for you to start developing skills, such as a good fake, such as a turnaround, such as dribbling between the legs and breaking your opponent's ankles, your defender's ankles, which gives you that split-second opening before the next defender closes in on you and projects pressure again, right? So there's a lot that has to go into work. Now, mind you, again, talking in a fairly fatalistic terms, right? In basketball, there is no per se danger to your life or well-being. there is a next game. There is a time to learn from mistakes. Now, I want you to imagine basketball like this. That thing behind me, it doesn't sit still. It moves. But here what it doesn't do, it doesn't move like this. Where with just a little bit of practice, you can have develop ability to calculate the lead, to calculate the timing, where you lead just a little bit and you go, I'm not going to wait until he's here to fire the shot, but as it starts crossing, boom, that's when I'm going to pull the trigger, and it should hit him somewhere where it matters, right? No, that thing behind me, that board, moves like this. I would submit to you, making a shot would be difficult. Here's another issue. It doesn't just move. That red rim on there, it's this magical device that fires things towards you anytime you static and open. So wait a second. What you're saying is now that I cannot fight for, win for myself, and establish that perfect starting shooting position that I perfected from a free throw line. And I'm going to have to try to make that shot while in motion without having optimal alignment of my body that's been instilled in me as a habit of how to shoot the ball from the free throw line. Is that what you're trying to tell me? That makes me very uncomfortable. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to learn this and understand this, look at the force on force classes that don't focus on scenarios, but focus on attributes, skill, and skill set development, that follow a pattern of force on target, force on non-resisting opponent, to force on force. There's more components in there, but it will be a separate discussion that I will address at a later time in a little bit different medium and in different circumstances, not in a parking lot of a local Russian Orthodox church. Yes, believe it or not, Salt Lake City, Utah has a Russian Orthodox church, and this is where I'm at, in the parking lot of that church. And this being Utah, they love basketball. They only have one professional sports team, and that's Utah Jazz. They're crazy about it. So when you look at the force on force training, okay, I will make this suggestion. Take at the least 2 force on force classes and make a decision for yourself that these 2 classes are not going to be to train to learn to become better. They're going to be diagnostics for where you stand. What do I mean diagnostics? Right? On the range, you stand on the shooting line, the coach, trainer, instructor yells fight, right? You take a step, you draw your weapon, you present it on the target, bam, 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 whatever is prescribed number of shots, maybe you address 2 separate targets, life moves on, you repeat that drill 15 times, 200 rounds later, someone pats you on the shoulder, at the end of 2 days you get a certificate, you calculate your losses of 2,000 rounds in the 2 days, and everyone pats you on the shoulder, they tell you that, yeah, you should probably take this class again because your marksmanship sucks. And you go home, right? Now, how that drill would be different if the target was moving. Okay? Fight is not determined, it's not a signal given by voice. Okay? Fight is the moment that you determine based by input, whether it's visual input. Think about it like this. You're standing in the hallway, a relatively wide hallway. There is a door on the right, there is a door on the left. Okay? You have your weapon in the holster, round chambered, preferably, right? And you're standing there. Not prepared, not your fingers moving, you're already in the shooting stance or whatnot. Maybe you're talking to somebody, And in our classes, we do that. We actually have people having meaningful conversations, and then out of the blue, from one doorway, and you won't know from which side it's going to go. Person runs out to run across the hallway into the next doorway. The only problem is that he runs with this pointed at you. Okay. Your task is to develop a skill of moving, drawing your weapon, presenting your weapon, and administering at least one accurate shot on that moving target. Now, target doesn't necessarily move like we talked about it earlier. No. Target moves and you don't know where it's going to come from. Like this. Okay. Meanwhile, you are engaged in an everyday activity, interacting with someone else, drinking coffee, texting on your phone, whatever the case might be, however we may structure drill. So yes, it is isolated drill to isolate specific skill development. Okay. In the diagnostic approach to it, you should be able, within a relatively small number of repetitions, to determine for yourself that you do have some issues to be addressed. Those issues may be ranging anywhere from your holster placement to the type of holster. Those issues may be to the way you perform the draw stroke and whether this is a draw stroke time. The issues may be that it takes you too long to get to sighted shooting position, and then you have to ask the question, is it even possible in such a short term with so randomly moving target who also tries to point his death machine towards me? And at some point, once we progress to this being force on force, this is training for both. He tries to shoot you, you try to shoot him. Okay? Do you think that this develops significantly more skill, applicable skill, than scenario-based training? Because again, in scenario-based training, generally speaking, there is no diagnostics. There is a diagnostics of how your mind works as far as avoiding conflict and then making that line in the sand, this is no longer avoidable, now I shoot him in the face. Great. But this is forcing you into what? It's forcing you away from a free throw line. It's forcing you to play the game that has pressure, unpredictability, unfair advantages, and many other factors that don't play into your playbook. It plays against you. Now, I know many of us would want to think that if, God forbid, we are ever involved in a situation where we need to use our firearm and take another human's life, it's going to be something like a few years ago at the church somewhere in Texas, right? Where you simply going to use that. No, not yet. His gun is pointing it toward in my general direction. Okay, boom, he shot that guy. Now he turned, he looked that way towards the pastor. Now he's 30 yards away. He's not even looking at me. Boom, I skin my fucking gun and I make a perfect 20, 25, 30 yard, or as in the latest example of shooting in the mall, 40-yard shot or numerous shots, and I dispose of the bad guy, thus preventing further bloodshed. No, you can be at this distance, right here, doorways, other people, and on and on and on. And you are not giving a luxury of a bad guy looking at someone else, choosing someone else as a target. You are in his vision cone. Your movement, your access of the weapon, your everything is gonna have to be polished and perfected to a level that shooting classes don't push students to perfect it to that level, because there is no necessity. We are training for the lowest common denominator. We are training for easy gunfight, if there is such thing as easy gunfight. But I submit to you, when the guy is 30 yards away, looking at 90-degree angle away from you towards his next chosen victim, and you're not even on his mind, the only skill you need there is marksmanship. You don't need to move. You don't need to avoid something. You don't need to make yourself harder to kill. You simply need to present that weapon in a relatively reasonable time, have good, reasonable accuracy, and work that baseline skill that you have practiced so many times from the free throw line. If good Lord above is so gracious that he sends you such a situation, you should certainly visit church more often and say your thanks and express your gratitude. The fact is that it's not a guarantee. You may be in a lot more chaotic, less predictable, and certainly much more unfavorable to you predicament. And that requires different training. So what kind of training we're looking for? Okay. When you're diagnosing the problem, okay, you want to get to the very bottom, to almost molecular level, reason, causation, what causes your actions to be less than desired in their proficiency, speed, timing, precision, accuracy, and on, right? It takes time and it takes dedicated, mindful, and I'm gonna underline this, mindful approach to your training. Scenario-based training will not push you into that. You need to find force-on-force classes that focus on skill development in a diagnostic manner that exposes where you lack, not only in skills, but in attributes that make that skill possible to execute in good enough quality. Notice I didn't say perfect, I said good enough. Here's big, very big and important, in my opinion, elephant in the room. When we bring our habits and skills that we developed from the free throw line in the gun training realm, static range, shooting, marksmanship training, what are we bringing? Let me try to describe to you what that elephant is. Everything you do is gonna be geared and oriented towards your ultimate goal, which is making a shot. More often than not, making that shot perfect. Why? Well, let's look at the classes. What kind of targets are we shooting? All the current big name instructors, you have multiple dots and you have to put 2 into 2, 3 into 3, this and that, and if it went 1 inch here, this is what you did, and you'll discuss all the fine details of grip, trigger work, presentation, your draw stroke, all of the shooting fundamentals, right? And you're gonna be judged by a placement of the hole on the target. So gradually your whole mindset, your whole being is being indoctrinated to be geared to strive to put all the components together, many things, your stance, your posture, your grip, your trigger, your eyes, all of the game, again, marksmanship fundamentals. Put it all into one spot, into that one magic ball, that one magic fist that facilitates a perfect shot. What does it take? It takes a lot of things to be in your favor. You have to have a luxury to be static. Remember what I told you about that magic red rim over there? Anytime you're static, shit's flying your way. You have to have a good grip, preferably two-handed grip, because that's 90% of our training, that's 90% of the time what we do in the shooting ranges. You have to have a positional alignment that facilitates that good shot, right? So legs a certain way, your orientation of the body, of your torso, of your base, your hips, your shoulder girdle, in relationship to a known, underline, target, has to facilitate all that. Your hand position, not only your grip itself on the weapon, but your elbows, your shoulders, your forearms, your twist, your support hand angulation, your thumb placement, all of that stuff has to be in such a way that facilitates uninterrupted actions to facilitate a perfect shot. Yet, when we asked in the class, what is more important in a gunfight, to shoot your opponent or not be shot by your opponent, almost to the one, everyone will, as a choir, respond. Most important thing is not to be shot. Ask yourself a question: how all of these attributes that you developed that are needed for the perfect shot from the free throw line, how are those attributes affecting your ability to be harder to kill? Stance implies what? Static. Two-handed grip implies what? Any kind of movement when you have two hands on the pistol will transfer any irregularities from your legs moving over the terrain into not one hand, but both hands, through your shoulders, and on and on and on. Both of those hands will affect the gun in a different way. You will need to search for one. Either you're going to need to wait for that time where you think like, not this, not now I think I have my sight picture alignment, now I'm going to press that trigger. Time is very important currency in the gunfight that goes both ways. You don't have much of it. It's not an NBA regulation time. It's counted in seconds and sometimes in split seconds. You don't have time. What can potentially buy you time? If my opponent sees this, can it potentially buy you time because he has harder time to acquire you as a target? Yes, it potentially can buy you time. Sometimes fairly significant amount of time. A second, second and a half, maybe 2 seconds before he has you on his sides. Now, just because he presses the trigger doesn't mean he has you. Okay, that's one of the great things with force-on-force training, because you can deploy things, obviously being very careful, as a blank pistols in combination with force-on-force pistols. Again, please be very careful, follow all the safety precautions, procedures, and all that stuff, because force-on-force pistols will not give you the sound signature that real weapons will have, especially indoors. People that not used to it, that always use hearing protection and all that stuff, it could be quite a shocking experience first time hearing that shot go off indoors in relatively close proximity. It may affect your ability to function. So there's many tricks that can be safely deployed in the force-on-force training that necessarily doesn't have anything to do with playing out scenarios and being a great strategist of the gunfighting. Okay, this is about developing attributes, skills, skill sets that will bring something that we'll talk about it a little bit later. So I hope that just this short kind of analogy between the basketball and what we do with firearms clarifies, at least to a small degree, what we would have to look for and to look at as far as when selecting what kind of force-on-force classes we would want to take to truly improve our performance. Now, I'll repeat myself. I'm not saying that scenarios don't have their place in training. They absolutely do. They are very important part of training. But if training focuses strictly on scenarios, and maybe within a scenario there's going to be a couple diagnostic moments that will show some technicality issues as far as your skill sets, and maybe magically somehow even going to bring it back to attributes, most likely the weaknesses it's going to expose, it's going to be your decision making. Why did you stay in that room for so long? Why did you even go to ATM? Why did you get out of your vehicle? And on and on and on, depending on the situation, right? Why did you walk so deep in the room instead of staying close to the door frame? So it will bring to the table through diagnostics your decision-making process versus your function as a gunfighter. Now, both of those, as I said, they have to be together. They have to be together. But if your decisions, no matter what decisions you make, don't bring the outcome, the desired outcome of de-escalation or you being able to remove yourself from the situation, what are you left with? You are left with hope and prayer that you will be able to do this from the free throw lane. How likely you think that is? How often in the basketball game between the competent two teams you see, if you look at the percentages, how often you see unchallenged shots versus challenged shots? Unchallenged shooting in the gun realm is not going to be majority of possible situations in real life. There will be challenges. Again, the difference is that rim, you may rig it up with some fireworks that will fire a little flares towards you or whatnot. In reality, those are not going to be little flares, ladies and gentlemen, right? These are going to be whichever caliber real things flying at you at a very high velocity. And if they make contact with your flesh, no matter where it's at, there will be consequences. Right? So are you working on developing fundamental skill to justify that word that so often we see on social media and t-shirts and patches and swag, be harder to kill? Are you really working to develop attributes, skills, skill sets to be harder to kill? You don't need to answer me. I don't have authority to demand that answer from you. I'm just a guy that has views and does some training because I came to conclusion over the long many years of training and teaching and watching others teach and interactions with students and colleagues in the training industry and people that go and do dangerous things in dangerous places and on and on. My Force on Force curriculum has changed significantly to where it started, when I was working with Ken Good from Strategos International, and then we formed separate company, Progressive Combat Solutions. A lot of Force on Force that Ken, all the way back from Shorefire Institute and then on to Strategos International, was geared strictly for law enforcement and most often team environment work. There was a lot of good stuff there, man. I learned a lot, okay? But my focus about that time was significantly shifting towards individual citizen. Not teams, not law enforcement, not military professionals, spec ops, and on and on. So while doing that training and then bringing lessons from that and then adjusting it, I saw some very, very significant differences in how those concepts apply to a professional environment, and I'm talking again law enforcement, military, teamwork, right? And how do you apply it to me and you, Joe Schmo, in the street, in his home, in his apartment, in his place of employment, in the store, in some social gathering place, be it a movie theater, a concert, a bar, a restaurant, a parking lot. There are some radical differences. And if that training does not address those differences, because they are fundamental differences, they truly are fundamental differences. we have to think about it very hard, because this basketball game involves different consequences for when we don't have attributes, skills, and skill sets that we can apply in real time for that minute, for that moment, in that moment. And it takes different training. It takes different approach to training. It takes charting your training and planning out what do you need to get out of this. So diagnosing your own suck, for most of folks that have not taken skill attribute based force on force classes, would probably be your main prerogative for the first couple force on force classes. It's self-diagnosing your own suck. What am I sucking at and why? Once you start addressing those things, you don't have to be in force on force class. You can address a lot of those things in your living room, your backyard, or your garage, without live firearms and without even owning a simunition or UTM gear. Okay, it can be done. We have had numerous people that were successful in developing those skills, and quite a few that actually have used those attributes, skills, and skill sets in unfortunate situations, and they came out all right. And this is not a bragging moment or whatnot. I don't put out any numbers out there of how many of my students have done this or won the gunfights or whatnot. I don't think that's data that's relevant. I don't think that's data that somehow, by the virtue of its existence, proves the validity of what I have to offer in my training. There's actually numbers of people that successfully avoided fights, walked away from the fights, or de-escalated situations is significantly higher than those that have participated in deadly encounters. That I consider a great achievement. Nevertheless, these people that walked away and de-escalated, they had, to one degree or another, attributes, skills, and skill sets, if their de-escalation was not successful, to deploy those skills and skill sets if, again, the situation escalated and they were not able to prevent further escalation. So, to summarize all that, please take your time to sit down and figure out where you stand. Make yourself, on the paper, seriously, write it down. First, what are the crucial attributes for shooting? Second, what are the crucial attributes for gunfighting? Third, what are the crucial attributes to evolution of the fight before it becomes a gunfight? Meaning before you and or your opponents were able to access firearms. If you just do those three, you will see a great disparity in how small the number of attributes is that are crucial for being a good shooter marksman versus gunfighter versus fighter. Great disparity in how much needs to be addressed. Now, you're going to need to correlate between the gunfighter and fighter and go like, what are the common themes there? Honestly, I would make suggestion without giving you specific suggestions as far as which schools, which instructors or whatnot. If you are a gun guy or gal or whatnot, get yourself enrolled in some kind of hand-to-hand combatives training. Whether it's boxing, jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, Sambo, Greco-Roman wrestling, Filipino-Indonesian arts, whatever it might be, crazy Russian stuff, get yourself involved to where you start getting the understanding of pressure, grind, and not having uncontested space and time to do a free throw shot. It will give you, if nothing else, it will give you great understanding and somewhat of a desperation how much you need to learn to buy yourself an opportunity to get to your weapon. Again, then the questions will be, is this legally justified, morally justified, and many other topics, right? So if you start by making these 3 lists, I think you're gonna, if you have functioning brain, something is gonna start clicking in it and making unpleasant noises, like this very, very annoying alarm at 5 a.m. That sounds like a freaking nuclear weapon is about to be fired from the silo. Yeah, one of those. Okay, and hopefully you'll listen to that alarm sound and you'll make a decision to start making some changes in your training priorities. If not, it really doesn't hurt me. It may potentially hurt you. You may not even feel that pain anymore. Your loved ones will. The saying is that when you die, it doesn't hurt you. It only hurts others. The same goes for stupid. When you're stupid, it doesn't affect you. It affects others. Don't be stupid in your approach and prioritizing your training. That way you don't become dead. I know it's kind of harsh during this holiday season. We should be more tolerant and everything, but generally I'm not known for that, although I'm working towards it. I even came to record this little video in the church parking lot to trying to tame my language and my harshness and all that stuff. And for the most part, I think it worked. All right. So this is just something really that I wanted to put out. I'm going to let it be on the social media for a few days. And then on this very topic, I want to have an interactive live session. So I don't know if it's going to be in a few days or a week or whatnot. I'll announce it. I'll do the live session on that. And eventually, after I get back home, I will be filming pretty exhaustive multi-episode thing for the podcast on this topic. If you do have questions, prepare them for the live session that's going to be coming here relatively soon. You can send them to me through social media. I'll try to address, especially if those are very relative, good, well thought out questions. All right. I hope it made some sense. I hope at least some of you to some degree will be triggered by this to take a better, deeper look at what you're doing, why you're doing, and how to structure it so you benefit from it better. All right. Thank you for your time. Sonny Puzikas here from somewhere in Salt Lake City. For those of you who celebrated Christmas on December 25th, Merry Christmas. For those of you who are yet to celebrate in January, Merry Christmas to you as well. Hope the new year brings more purpose, more clarity into our lives, and we get better in the new year. God bless.